Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in. It's the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football on this May the 14th. We're ready to get things underway. Thanks so much for joining us. We're here 3 times a week at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, part of Rivals.com. We're the Maize and Blue Review. We'll tell you how to join up and get instant access and get to know even more. You might think, I know a lot about Michigan football. You'll know more if you join up the Maize and Blue Review. Again, I'll tell you how to do that coming up. Today, what we're going to be talking about is at the end of this broadcast, I'll give you a thought. I'll give you a couple thoughts on last night's Tigers game. And then also I'm going to go back a couple days to the NBA draft where a lot of people thought it was rigged. But I've said this before. It's going to be 2% of this show. 98% of this podcast is about Michigan, and it's almost always about Michigan football and basketball. There could be some exceptions here and there. And that's how today's going to go. 98% of this show is going to be 5 of the biggest questions around Michigan football right now. Ooh, trending questions. What people are talking about. If you took a million Michigan fans and said, what's the biggest thing or two that are on your mind? And would put it all together. I think I have all 5 for you. As always, if you're out there and you're watching this live and you want to get involved via the feedback, go ahead, punch it in, and we'll be able to see what you have to say. Maybe you're just coming in and checking in and saying, hey, go Blue, like Brett and like John, who's saying what's up to everyone. And let's start out with that question. We'll go from 5 to 1, with 1 being the question that I think is on most Michigan fans' minds. But this is one of the 5 biggest. And I think people want to know if Michigan is going to make the college football playoffs, the 12-teamer. The last year that they're going to have a 12-teamer, just the second year that they're going to do it. You know all of this. And at first glance, besides Ohio State and the Big Ten, Michigan has a perfect, I don't know about perfect. They have a good schedule where they dodge a lot of the teams that are supposed to be the better teams in the Big Ten. Like if you go to Oregon, it's weird saying Indiana, but Illinois, Penn State, that would be on that list. Michigan does not play any of those teams. So from that standpoint, it's good. I have not actually seen the point spread for every single game this year, but it was, I don't know, a month or two. There were enough Michigan fans that were saying that U of M is favored in every game that they're going to play this year. And so you see that and you say, well, they should win at 10 out of the 12 games. And I understand that thinking there. I think that Ohio State's going to be their toughest game, but I think they're going to win that game. I like how Michigan has turned the tables. I like how they're in Ohio State's head. I like Ohio State, even after they win the national championship, Michigan still beat them. And, the game's in Ann Arbor. And so, I feel pretty good about Michigan's chances of beating Ohio State, although, Ohio State is, they got a hell of a team and all of that, but I think Michigan will beat them. Having said that, I did flip about a month or so ago from a 2-loss team to a 3-loss team. Just looking through it, I think Michigan, if I had to pick the 3 games that I think they would lose, Oklahoma, at Nebraska, and then at USC. Those would be the 3. And you could say, you're an idiot. Why do you think, well, they're on the road. Michigan's got a young quarterback, I think, is going to be under center. And, you're bound to make some mistakes that way. And that's it. I'm just giving you my prediction. Now, I say I hope I'm wrong, because I would like to. If you said, hey, here's the magic wand, and you can say Michigan is in the playoffs or not, what are you going to do? And I would say, I want to take Michigan to get to the playoffs every time. I like him. I want to see him there. It'd be more exciting. So all of those things, but so that's just my pick, and you can hate me for that if you want to. I don't have any problem with that, and I don't. I know there's a thing about being in the off season where you like to, rally the troops and get it. Let's just all have positive thinking all the time. Let's just talk about going undefeated or certainly making a college football playoff. Just all fun, and I think there's a point to that. Just let's not think about there's so much negativity out there and from other fan bases and the media and everything else. Just build a wall around Michigan and just have some fun. I get that. And so if you were running a podcast, you would say that's how I would do it because of all the things that you just mentioned. Well, I think it's completely understandable, and I think it's not a bad idea in terms of what if you're serving the Michigan fan. I think there's a lot of fans that are just like that. That's what they want. Just serve it up to me. Just serve up the positivity. Who cares? There's enough negativity. John is predicting that Michigan sweeps the Big Ten. So going undefeated through the Big Ten. And here we have Garrison, who is coming in through, he's an Ohio State fan. But hey, Garrison's one of the good ones out there. And there are, some Ohio State fans that are decent people, Garrison being one of them. So that's the first one. The top 5 burning questions as we sit here in mid-May. Number 5, is Michigan going to make the college football playoff? Number 4, biggest question for Michigan here in the middle of May. Who are their playmakers on offense? Who are U of M's playmakers on offense? Well, I've put up a few on the board. Bryce Underwood, for sure, is a playmaker. Jordan Marshall at running back, I think will get to 1,000 yards this year. I believe he is going to be the top running back, but Justice Haynes, if you want to say, Marshall is 1A and Haynes is 1B, whatever, split backfield. You wouldn't get much of an argument for me. I could certainly see that happening, a 1-2 punch. However they rotate him in, give him equal amount of carries almost. But I think ultimately it will be Marshall if we're predicting. I also have Hogan Hansen as a playmaker on this list and Donovan McCulley, the transfer from Indiana, the big-bodied wide receiver. Now, I highlighted Hansen. If there is a hot take that I have today, in the middle of May, here it is. I believe that Hogan Hansen will lead Michigan in receptions and targets this year for the Maize and Blue. I say that because I think Underwood is going to be the quarterback. What I know from watching all of these years of football that I have is that young quarterbacks tend to have a security blanket with their tight end. The close to the line of scrimmage, sure-handed, they're right there. They often check down and go to their security blanket in almost any quarterback. And at any level that I've watched, they do that right out of the gate. I also think about the spring game this year from a guy that I'd never heard of before, Jalen Hoffman, who was targeted the most, had the most catches, and had the most yards. I mean, he went off in the spring game. And it wasn't just the 88-yard, splash play that he made at the end. He was going to be there anyways. And Hansen, when Colston Loveland didn't play against Ohio State last year. When, who was that? Was it, I was going to say Sawyer. So I think they picked off Davis Warren down at the goal line. If you remember that, the receiver that was being targeted in the end zone was Hogan Hansen. And so, I think Hansen, there's going to be more because there's going to be a quarterback that can throw the football down the field. There's, I think, better wide receivers. But I also think that Hansen, because of all the things that I just said, is a good candidate to lead Michigan in receptions and targets, and that's why I put him in bold here and have a little bit of a hot take. If I don't know how many people would pick Hansen to be Michigan's leading receiver this year, but there it is. And there's Michigan's playmakers on offense, and that's not a bad thing necessarily. To have your tight end be the reception leader and target leader. But you are going to need some help with those other wide receivers out there and all of that. And so hopefully they do get that, like with Donovan McCulley. So there it is when it comes down to the playmakers. I like taking a zip or two through here. G Money is saying Bryce Underwood is ready by August the 30th. That happens to be the opening date this year for Michigan against New Mexico. And here's 10 games prediction for Michigan, which I think is going to get him into the college football playoff. So let's go. Hope G Money knows what he's doing. So we're counting them down from 5 to 1 on the burning questions here in mid-May with Michigan football. Are they going to make the college football playoff? Who are Michigan's playmakers on offense? And let's go to number 3. G Money is talking about Underwood starting the opener. And G Money, I am with you. If I had to make a prediction today, somebody called up and said, hey, we want to know who you think is going to start against New Mexico for Michigan, I would say put me down for Bryce Underwood. If they wanted further details, you think it's a sure thing, I would say there's no such thing. No, I would say that I believe that he has an 80% chance as we sit here in mid-May of starting for Michigan. He had the entire spring. Michigan got a great look at him. Sure enough, Keene's got over the 2,000 snaps or whatever he had at Fresno and in his college career, but he did not play in the spring, which is fine for him if he can ramp back up and he can show everybody and he can compete in the fall. But it also opened the door for both Jaden Davis and Bryce Underwood to get the majority of the snaps. And it was obvious. We saw it on the day of the spring game. Of all of the practices that I've ever been to in college and in pro, they normally have a list of 4, or I shouldn't list they usually have 4 or 5 quarterbacks going through taking the snaps, and that's not the way it was at the spring game. It was all Underwood for the Blue, and it was all Davis for the Maize. They got a lot of work. You got a real good look at them. I think that was great for all of us. We talked so much about Underwood and what he can do and how he can throw, and same thing for Jaden Davis. Everybody was really interested to see what he could do. We saw those guys throw 100 or 200 footballs, and normally you would only see a quarter or a fifth of that. I'm talking about in the practice type, or even where they're just warming up. We were able to see all of the reps that they were taking, and then of course, if we go to previous spring games, you usually get another quarterback or two that will get in there and they will get some reps. And that's not the way that it worked for Michigan. So I believe that Underwood was able to show him what he could do, got a lot of that experience, and could have been a blessing in disguise, at least for Underwood, in terms of him starting. And so burning question number 3, will Underwood start the opener? I'm saying yes. And I would bet on that, depending what the odds were. I'm not going to, it's minus 500. No, I'm not interested in betting Bryce Underwood, but if I could get, some pretty decent odds, well, then maybe I would, Brett. And I don't know. There probably is some sports book, probably an offshore one that is putting odds out on who would be the starting quarterback for Michigan against New Mexico. And the odds-on favorite would be Bryce Underwood in that book. If it wasn't, then I could see myself going in there and placing a bet. So that's burning question number 3. Burning question number 2 that I think that's on all Michigan fans' minds, at least the majority of them, when you poll 1 million different Michigan fans, is about paying recruits and revenue sharing and a salary cap and the House settlement on revenue. Now you can say, I don't care anything about that. But if you care about recruiting, I think you do care about this, because Michigan is taking the approach, whether you like it or not, that they're not going about things as business as usual, which is a weird thing to say because the business in the last 3 or 4 years has changed drastically. But they're not only playing it close to the vest, but a number of recruits have said that Michigan's not giving them these exact numbers when it comes down to NIL. And Michigan's saying they don't know because there's a House settlement. Now you can say, well, that's smart. That's a real smart move by Michigan. Because what if there is a salary cap and then these teams are all going to be over? Michigan will be able to go in there and then they will be able to use whatever cap or revenue sharing that they have, and then they will be able to adjust. Where these other teams, they're going to have to cut guys, and then our guys really going to want to take less money when they already got it. I don't know when the contract's in there now or what the contracts say. I feel like, and I'm sure Michigan has thought about this, is that how could the NCAA limit any money, any deals that have been made right now to any recruits when there wasn't a rule about it? Are they just going to come up with a rule at the end of June 1st? Like, oh, yep, you've got your revenue sharing at 22 million, and then your collective can only go up to 22 as well. Anything over that, and people are going to be like, hey, what? I don't know. 22 from a collective sounds like a lot. 44 mil you could end up paying. That all sounds like a lot to me. But that's why Michigan fans are interested in it, because they want to start landing big-time recruits. And I say June 1st, June and July, those are big months for recruiting. I'd like to see that. They were supposed to get this done by the end of April, and then the judge was like, wait a second, we got to get this hammered out. And now it's just moving slowly, and we're waiting for June. In addition to waiting for June, we're waiting for June 6th or 7th, and that's where we get to the number one question that's on Michigan fans' minds, and that is, what about the Stallions penalties that we're supposed to see what it's going to be on June 6th or 7th? And we saw from the Michigan side, whatever was leaked out about Sharon Moore being suspended for those 2 games. There's a thought that Michigan has negotiated this already, and there will not be any postseason bans or vacated victories, and they might just be negotiating whether it's going to be 2, 3, or 4 games. Will the NCAA stay with Michigan's hand-picked 2 games? Will they bump it up to 3 or 4? I don't know. I know there's a lot of experts. We have great insiders ourselves here at the Maize and Blue Review, and this is not against any of them or any of their sources, but yeah, I think that Michigan and the Michigan sources all feel like that it's going to be less than what other people, that's always the way it is, and that's how it's playing out here. I'm not over here telling you that I think there's going to be vacated victories or postseason bans. I don't feel like that, but the part that I do feel is that as many times as I read of what seems like a consensus of what's going to happen for Michigan People aren't 100% sure, but they're pretty confident that it could be just 2 games and that there is negotiating going on and that there's not going to be postseason bans or there's not going to be vacated victories. And they point to, well, there's never been ineligible players. And it's good to look at the precedent. I will tell you that the NCAA, there's really, looking over the years, I've never felt like that there's, we say rhyme or reason, they're not very predictable and they're unpredictable. So trying to predict something that's unpredictable when you want something to happen, it's a dangerous game. So I don't think you need to sit around holding your breath or anything, but I'm just not so sure about a couple things. And here's the couple things. It gets to the part where it says, well, 2 games or could maybe a little bit more. Maybe it will be the first 2 games and they can embarrass Sharon more because it'll be the Oklahoma game where that's his alma mater. You can make a case for that. I can see that. I can easily see that. And then the part where people talk about the fines or scholarships, people don't care. Michigan fans don't care about the fines. The school, of course, is going to care about the fines. But when it comes to the scholarships, they're always like, what does it matter? What if they're not going to take all the scholarships? What if they took all the scholarships? Michigan still could pay those up to 105. So that's not really going to hurt. So you have to ask yourself, what will hurt Michigan? This is what I've asked myself. And what I think would hurt Michigan is that, taking off scholarships and finding them is embarrassing. Just like not being able to coach that Oklahoma game, that would be embarrassing for Michigan and for Sharon Moore. I could easily see the NCAA doing that. I could say, we're negotiating, but we still want to make it hurt. And, I don't know how much they're sitting over there and saying, well, let's do something that's fair. I feel like they want to hurt Michigan. I don't know if that's how you feel or not. That's how I feel. And how could they hurt him? So a fine hurts a little bit. Yeah. Anytime you're going to somebody's pocket. The scholarships, we've already said, that just is it's a perception thing. It's about, taking the coaches off the road or really not being able to let them communicate with the players. And that's where I think they're going to go. And that's where I think they could go with the fines as well. People are trying to guess, well, it could be 8 or 10. Tennessee was whatever, it was 12. You go through all this, but if the NCAA wants to make it look like that Michigan was very bad here, and look at Harbaugh was suspended, Moore's now suspended, we're, hitting you over the head with a fine, and we're giving all these recruiting restrictions, and it could build up where I feel like this is how I felt all along, and you've heard me say that I think it's going to be a little bit more than what Michigan thinks, but it's going to be less of what their opponents and rivals think. And even furthermore now, I still feel like U of M is going to think it's going to be too much. But if it came down, let's just say to what basically people are saying now, 2 games and fines and scholarships, that's going to feel like a Michigan win. And you could go and tell Ohio State fans to go stick it in their ear, and you could declare victory, which is what Michigan fans want to do and what they will do and what they should do. And yet the opponents will not think it's enough, and yet they will be able to hang this scarlet letter on Michigan for, and they'll continue to do it. They can point to, look at all the fine. Look at the scholarships. Yeah, you guys didn't do anything. Look at your coach. He's going to be embarrassed. Now, so it's, again, both sides are going to feel like they win when this comes out. And both sides will declare victory, and then each side yet is going to think that it's too much or too little. That's how I think it's going to play out. That's how I have felt from the beginning. I still feel like that. Now, Joel Klatt, whatever you think about Joel Klatt, he had some things to say on his podcast. Let's look through them. So Joel Klatt said sitting out the Central Michigan game and Nebraska games are self-serving. He said, quote, he said he thinks the NCAA is going to look through that and basically be like, no, we're going to look for something more meaningful. More meaningful. And then, like, I guess I can't read what I wrote down here because there'll be more likely, he says. Now, the part about it being self-serving, yeah, Joel, what do you want Michigan to do? Let's have them sit out the first 4 games. Or of course I'm going to call him a dummy. Of course it's self-serving. You don't want any suspension. But if you have to take some, why not pick and choose the games? Down through the history, when you always watch that, you'd always see a team that, they're playing Huckabuck State. And I say, well, you're going to be suspended for the opener. Everybody's like, it's Huckabuck State. Well, of course. What do you want, Joel, to have sit out the Ohio State game? So, of course, it's self-serving. It's what else would you even think? That's just, it sounds like I don't want to say a dumb remark, but yeah, we know that it's self-serving. But so is the NCAA going to say, no, we're going to take the first 2, not those games 3 and 4? Sure. I mean, we could come up with a lot of different scenarios. They could say, well, we're going to tack on an additional one. We're going to move them up. It's going to be the first 2. We're going to give you 3. You can make your prediction. Again, it's the NCAA is very unpredictable. So trying to predict it, even if you're, looking at all these Michigan experts and saying, well, this is what they all think, that's great. I'm just saying to each and every one of those people that you guys don't maybe know as much as you think you might know, because you're all getting it from the Michigan, side. And so Joel, I get what he's saying here. They're going to look for something a little bit more meaningful. There's a part that people believe that Michigan has negotiated this, that this is all, and they must have some kind of idea, because the last time that they came out with the notice of allegations, Michigan's team came out. What do they call it? This is wildly overreaching. They made it sound like this was the worst thing that ever. Like they didn't have a leg to stand on, the NCAA. What a joke, basically, when they saw the notice of allegations. But now they're like, oh well, we'll suspend 2 games. That to me, that's a change of course. Now, I've had a lot of lawyers and people that's how things work. You say this is a complete farce, and then it's a joke, but then you serve up, a couple games. Do they have an idea? Yeah, I think they have some kind of idea how much they have negotiated, how much the NCAA. I have a hard time predicting them, so let's just see how they do that. The last part that Klatt had to say is what I see a lot of people saying, and this is one of those that you can just go anywhere with. And somebody probably told Joe, hey, their president, Santa Ono, Santa's not going to the North Pole. He's going to the Sunshine State. He's going to Florida. And Klatt called Ono leaving interesting timing, quote unquote. Now, it's kind of, yeah, anytime a president leaves, it could be like interesting timing, anytime he was going. And Klatt said, something's coming and it's likely very large and it could be even financial. Now, he said that was an assumption. So that's what Klatt says. And he's like, Joel Klatt, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. He even said it's an assumption. That's it. It's his opinion and it's his assumption. And he's feeling like it's interesting timing with the president. But I think when it comes down to the president, that if somebody asked me my true feelings on if Santa Ono leaving had anything to do with Michigan football, I would say no. I highly doubt it. And then to explain myself on that, I would say Santa Ono is getting a lot more money to go down to Florida, and that's usually the reason that people leave one job for another. I mean, he's jumped around. It's not like he was at Cincinnati forever. He moves around. and he's getting paid more money. That would be the first thing that I would look at. I would look at that with anybody. What kind of salary are you getting paid? He's getting paid more. So it could be as easy as that. It's also, sometimes I feel like the jobs like AD and president are really easy. These guys just sit around and, take pictures at sporting events and shake some hands and, do some press conferences. But they're a little bit more difficult than that. It's not all just, Ward Manuel's not just out playing golf every single day, just on the weekends. But Ono's got to deal with a protest. He's got with Dearborn being right down the road, you got the largest concentration of Arab Americans, like right 20 minutes away, 30 minutes down the expressway. The Michigan student body has a large Jewish contingent. And so you have these protests on campus. Maybe it's like that everywhere at all of the campuses, but because of the proximity of Dearborn and how many, that is, I don't know how you handle that. Usually, we all have a lot of experts about, well, this is what I would do. That's tough. That's a tough thing to navigate as a president, those particular protests. You got Michigan shutting down the DEI program. And Ono took a lot of heat for that. Why don't you be like Harvard? And who cares about the $450 million cut? That's also a very difficult decision to make. You got money, you got people coming at you. It's like a no-win situation either way he went there. You got the graduate employees. Those guys are protesting or striking, I think is what they're doing. Those things probably go on everywhere. But I would put all of those things. I don't know how deep Joel Klatt looked into it, but I don't think Ono's like, oh, they're going to suspend Sharon for 3 games instead of 2. I'm out of here. I don't know. But that's just me when it comes down to that. But I saw people denouncing Klatt as though he has no idea about anything. I think when it came down to Ono, and I was just searching around Michigan and studying that, and all these podcasts were popping up, and all of these screaming headlines like, this is why Ono's going. And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe they're all, talking about the protests and the DEI programs and the votes and the regents and the board of all these different things that you have to go through. I don't know. Maybe they were, or maybe they were just playing that real easy one. Like, Ono knew something was up with the you can do it. You could do it. So that's, I don't think that, to restate that again, I don't think, as much as everybody wants to, it makes for good copy, makes for good podcast, gives you something to talk about. It's here in May. That Ono leaving had anything to do with the football program or the upcoming penalties. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to take some of the feedback, and then I'll give you a couple thoughts on the Tigers and the NBA draft. And for that feedback, we will go to Ted, who says it's like the American judicial system to delay, and throw a wrench into the process. Yeah, from people that just are, maybe you're a lawyer and you're watching this and say, yeah, that's how things work. That's the system. You always hear, speedy trial, but then you hear the wheels of justice are slow. And I think a lot of Michigan fans, they remind me of lawyers, and that, lawyers, they know how to pick apart the statements and everything else. But lawyers are serving their client. And so it really doesn't matter whether they're guilty or innocent. They are just trying to free or prosecute whatever the case may be, whatever side that you're on there. They're just serving their client. And I think Michigan fans are like lawyers that way. They're just trying to get Michigan in the clear. So anything that they can use, it doesn't matter whether they're guilty or not. They just want to use whatever they can to And I get that. I understand that. I'm not over here sitting with everything that's gone on, which we would all just like to see Michigan get this in the rearview mirror and be able to play football. Let's get back to playing football. That's what you want. Right? LTM, let's go. LTM says, let's just win it all. Now, hey, Michigan just winning it all would be incredible. Let's do it. Ted likes where I'm coming from. Brent says, doesn't matter the punishment. It's still not going to save Ohio State or Michigan. Yeah, I think the majority, when we start to talk about punishment, it's really more going to be about the hurtful part, and sure, the money and what we just went through all that, but it's really about having to hear it and wear it and have everybody, always coming at you with whatever happens. I mean, that's as big as anything that's going to happen with what the NCAA has to say. And you know that. But it's a good thing to remind yourself of. Like, Michigan's going to be able to play football this year. It would be a real shocker if they were, suspended from postseason play. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that would be, just an utter shock if that was going to be the case. So they're going to be able to play, but the NCAA is, they want to hang a scarlet letter on Michigan. They want to, I say embarrass them, but they want to, people say a pound of flesh. I get that. They want to show that, hey, Michigan, you got all your lawyers and you've got everything else, but, this is what we're going to hang this on you. And so you just have to deal with that part. But Michigan's going to play football, and, it's going to be okay. If you didn't believe that part about them just wanting to hang a scarlet letter on you, why do you think it's so important for Michigan to not have their wins vacated? And I know then use ineligible players, and I know there's a million things that other people say, because they don't want all of the talk about, oh, you really weren't the champs. No, they want that validated. And I know that the president of the NCAA already said they're good to go. So people are hanging their hat on that, which I understand. And but that's why they fight that one. And you know that. And I know that. So that's it. Those are the 5 things. And if you're just joining us, let's recap them from 5 to 1. The burning questions that are on Michigan fans' minds. Number 5, is Michigan going to make the college football playoff? Yeah, everybody wants to know about that. Number 4, who are Michigan's playmakers on offense? I gave you 1, 2, 5. Gave you a fast 5. Underwood, Marshall, Haynes, Hansen, and McCulley. Will Underwood start the opener? That is on everyone's mind. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I say yes to Underwood starting. Number 2, when will the House settlement on revenue, cap, and collective bargaining be announced? If you say that's not on my mind, but recruiting is, this is kind of the same thing as recruiting. It's you got to know what you're dealing with before you can get out there and recruit. And until it gets resolved, it's there. Hopefully even before June, they could come out. But, June 6th, June 7th, we're waiting on those days about the penalties with Stallions, and then we can begin to move on. I would say hopefully at that point. That's what, and we went over some of the things that Joel Klatt had to say. I told you that if you're looking to know more about Michigan than you know already, which is probably a lot, this is what's happening all day and all night over on the Maize and Blue Review. Stories, features, inside information, everything that makes the Maize and Blue tick is on the Maize and Blue Review. You can join up and get instant access today by going to michigan.rivals.com. We'd love to see you. Talking about Michigan over there. And then, there's a few other different threads on there, like the Tigers. There's a Tigers thread, which, some people watch the game. If you're watching by yourself, you go to Twitter and you just type in Javi Baez. You put a bunch of exclamation points. People retweet you. And, it's fun. It is fun doing things like that. I do that myself. And we have a game thread where we're talking about the Detroit Tigers over on the Maize and Blue Review. And then, but the Tigers are off to such an incredible start. And they're such a great story. And yeah, they've got fantastic pitching, but they've also got, you start going down that lineup, and there's no bigger story than with the Tigers than the resurrection, than the complete turnaround of Javi Baez. Now, when the Tigers made that 31-11 run at the end of last year, Baez got hurt, and then it was like, nobody missed him. And everybody's like, get rid of him. Just eat the money. The Tigers would have done that if they didn't have to eat so much money. But here's Baez. I've never quite seen a story like Baez where a guy was, a team was considering eating $90 million. Okay, he was so bad. And here they, switch positions and put him out there. And now he's an absolute star in what he's doing. Defensively, 2 3-run homers last night. Whatever happens to the Detroit Tigers this year, the extra inning game where Javi Baez hit the first pitch for a winner after the Tigers got down in the top half of the inning, and an extra inning game where it was back and forth. This, of course, is the best game of the year so far. And maybe they'll be able to top it. You'll have one that can be put into the running where you say, that one was even better than the Baez 2-home run game. I don't see that. But man, last night I know when I'm just sitting there. I mean, I knew it anyways, but I'm just sitting there watching this whole thing, and it's like the ups and downs, and whoa, no, then it looked like it was over. Only to see them win it with one swing of the bat like that at the end. It was just, if you like baseball, of course, you like the Tigers, but man, that's everything that you want in sports. That was great. Now, the other thing I wanted to say was I wanted to go to the NBA draft, in which the Mavs had under a 2% chance to win. And then they won the right to get Cooper Flag. Ends up being great for the Pistons. Flags. He's going west. You couple that with Tatum's injury, and it looks like the Greek Freak more than likely will be going to the Western Conference. It really puts the Pistons in a nice position where you're just thinking about the Pistons, who don't have a first-round pick because they gave it up a couple of years ago so they could draft Beef Stew. That was a good move. Got to remember that coming up to draft night. But the first thing, I was a little bit stunned when the Mavs, like everyone, got the number 1 pick. And I thought, if it would have been San Antonio, that would have felt like it was premeditated, that, the people like conspiracy theories. That would have been the one where, boy, that's they're really going to hear it. I really wasn't thinking that with Dallas, but the amount of people that immediately came out just like, this thing is so rigged. And it's like everyone, and it's not, we're all fans. You understand it from a fan standpoint. Fans love drama. It's an easy thing to do. And it's easy to bag on sports leagues, whatever else. And I love conspiracy theories. So immediately I could see all the fans, but the amount of media that's just fanning the flames out of, like, oh yeah. There's one part where I said, is there any critical thinking at all with people that are in the media that go about this? Or are they really just trying to engage with the fans so they can get engagement for likes and, are they just doing this because you had somebody come out and say, you know what? if you really think about it, there's no way in the world that the NBA is fixing the number one pick and giving it to Dallas. People will be like, "You're an idiot," So I don't even they. It just doesn't play very well. I tried about saying it. It just doesn't play well because of, like I said, people don't want to hear that. They want to hear that there is this grand conspiracy thing out. But then I tried following. I was just talking with my friend about it, who said, "Yeah, it really seemed like the Mavs that was rigged for them to get Cooper Flagg." And I said, "So you're telling me that Dallas, when they made the trade, they were in the playoffs, that they made a deal with the commissioner that if they fell out of the playoffs, that at that point that they would just get awarded the number one pick?" That's what you're telling me? He's like, "Yeah." As a month later, Kyrie Irving got hurt, and then AD was out for a long time. They still made the playoffs in the play-in, and they didn't win the first game in the play-in, so they had another one. And so if they win that game, what was going to be the deal then? So then the following year or something that they were going to be put in and awarded the first-round pick? Did they, how did you, come about? It doesn't make sense. They didn't know Irving was going to get hurt. They didn't know. You could say AD always gets hurt. All right. Did they make other deals like this? It's just LeBron. I know the Ewing and the cold envelope, but then the Cavaliers got two other first-round picks there too. Were they giving the Cavs? Do they do it every year? Or they just do it some years? Or they just do it when they really need to hook up the Lakers or the Celtics? I mean, do you really follow that? Again, I think people like, the serious conspiracy theories. They're out there, but you're like, okay, landing on the moon and JFK and 9/11. People are into those things, but sports conspiracies, I guess they're just fun. People don't really care. They don't really care about walking it through and really thinking about it. They're just like, oh yeah, that's exactly what they do. Adam Silver would, let's just see what he's got planned for next year. So he would take care of the Lakers and he'd take care of the Celtics and he'd take care of the Mavs in this instance, but the other 27 teams and the owners, they're not in on it unless their number comes up. And then there's some behind the scenes dealing with that owner. I mean, you're thinking about that, right? All these smart writers and talk show hosts, they've walked through all of this and they're able to see it. And you're like, yeah, that's right. That's how it's working. It's a little bit like, big time wrestling. And so the thing that I'm going to say is I'm not here to defend the lottery or anything else. NBA doesn't need me to defend it. It's their own fault. It's their own fault. They have a league where more than half of the teams are trying to lose to get into this lottery, to even have a 1% or 2% chance to try to get a lottery pick. It also goes to show you just about gambling. So many years the Pistons were there and they didn't get the number one with Cade, and their team has been built on tanking. They have Ivy and Sir Thompson, all because they tanked, didn't win. They got Cade, they did. But the point was, when every time that the Pistons didn't win the lottery, the immediate reaction of everyone was, oh, this is the worst system ever. And yet there's nobody who really has a good system when teams quit and try to lose on purpose. They don't have, let's just let them. I mean, they don't have any good. The system is take half of the games and throw them out the window. And because you're just robbing people, and the teams or the players want to rest. They want all the money, so they've made this system. So they're the people to blame. They should just look in the mirror. So just have fun with it. That's what I wanted to say about it. And I have. So those are my thoughts. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you over on the Maize and Blue Review. We'll see you Friday. And until then, Have yourself a great rest of the day, and we'll talk with you on Friday.